are the champion, the one that holds the line and finishes the mission. Everything that you want is within your grasp. You wake up in the morning ready to dominate the day, and every step taken is with purpose and integrity. Because you were not put on this planet to live a mediocre existence. You are here to conquer and make the biggest impact possible, not only for yourself, but for your family and for your tribe. This world is a battlefield, and we will be victorious. This is the Norse Mentality.
What's up, guys? I hope that you are having a glorious day. If this is your first time listening to the Norse Mentality, my name is Andy Lewis, and with me here is Cody Whitley, aka Cowboy Cody. The whole purpose of this podcast is to help you reach your true potential, and every episode is designed in order to help you do so. And on this one, we're going to be talking about radical honesty. Having radical honesty with yourself is probably the hardest thing that we can do, but it's also the most important thing that we need to do if we want to pursue a life of self-improvement and continue to evolve over time. Now, the reason that is so hard is, well, there's multiple reasons for it, but the first one is you have to have self-awareness. That is not something that just comes naturally. It's cultivated over time with deliberate purpose and action. On a daily basis, at all times, we have to be kind of taking an outside view of ourselves and observing what we are doing in the present moment. The second reason that this is so difficult is because it is very hard to accept your flaws and then take action to fix those flaws in order to become a new person. The ego wants us to remain the same because it's comfortable in there. It doesn't want to admit that we have all these fucked up things that we need to address in order to become a better person. Now, there are other reasons why radical honesty is so difficult, but I think those two are the most important, and that's what we're going to tackle on this episode. So with that being said, Cody, jump on in. Just threw you under the fucking bus there.
Yeah, man. Like you said, definitely one of the hardest things that I've had to learn how to do. And I think what's so difficult about it is you have to accept these flaws from a non-emotional, non-biased standpoint. It can't be... If you tie emotion and bias to this, either you're not going to do the work or you're going to beat yourself up so much because you have fallen short in some way or another that you're not going to want to do the work.
And we have to do it without emotion, which is very difficult to do, like you said, but we also have to do it and accept reality for what it is. We have to accept that this is where we are currently at. We have to accept that these are the actions that we've been doing probably our entire life. And being okay with that and not beating ourselves up to the point where we fall into depression and self-hatred and all these other things. Because when we fall into depression and self-hatred, we're no longer taking action. We are depleting ourselves of vital energy. Let's think about it like this. We've all been depressed before, where we don't want to get out of bed. We just want to pull the covers over our face and say, fuck today, I don't want to participate. Compared to if we wake up in a good mood, full of positive energy, we catapult out of bed and we want to conquer the day. That is because we have more energy to do so. So when we're observing ourselves and we're observing these actions and just having honesty with who we are right now, we have to be careful about our mental space during this process. Because if we start beating ourselves up and our self-talk takes a negative turn, your energy is going to be depleted drastically. And if you don't have any energy, how can you expect to take action? How can you expect to stack victories? So I think that's the first step here. When we take this outside view of ourselves, when we start observing what we are doing on a daily basis that is stopping us from living our best life, stopping us from becoming the best version of ourselves, we need to also be observing our self-talk during that time. And whenever it starts to be negative, just be like, hey, I'm fucking human. We all make mistakes. The issue, though, is that if we continue making these mistakes when we become aware of them.
I think it's very important to know that before going into this, because what's going to happen is at the beginning, there's probably going to be a few big things that pop up. Once you deal with those, there's going to be a lot of shit that you don't even understand that's there, that you're going to have to fix as well.
I'm currently dealing with that right now. Like, I'll be real with everyone. A lot of my self-work here lately has been being a better father, being a better partner, because my girlfriend, my daughter, those are the two most important things in my life. And all I want is to have a good family, right? So I'm always taking a step back and be like, okay, how can I be better at this? And here lately, it has been my main purpose. When I'm meditating, any extra time that I have for self-reflection, it's reflecting on my actions throughout the day when I'm at home with those two girls. And I have discovered a lot of really bad things lately in myself. And it sucks. Like, it is fucking awful when my main purpose is to be the best dad and the best partner possible. And then realizing that I have not been doing it. And it was I wasn't conscious of it. I wasn't conscious of all this shit that I was doing. Like, in real time, I thought that I was doing my best. And maybe I was, based off that level of self-awareness that I had in that moment. But when reflecting on all that stuff, I've been kind of shitty. And realizing that was very difficult to accept.
So let's go back to what we were talking about of the negative self-talk. If you're allowing that to happen, and then you're doing the work like you're saying, and those two meet to where you're already talking negatively internally, and then these big faults that you have that you're aware of at this point collide, if you're not ready for that, and you don't expect that and know that that's a potential, when those two meet, it's going to be the perfect storm to just put you in the fucking dirt.
And it tried. So with me the past few weeks, it really tried. And it got the best of me a couple times. It really did. And it was being able to kind of press the pause button and be like, no, we're not doing this. We're better than this. It's everything that we talk about on this podcast. It was taking all those tools and start applying them to the situation. It was getting control of my self-talk. It was realizing that I am human and that I am going to make mistakes and that I'm not perfect. And while I was doing this, I also discovered that I have almost unhealthy standards for myself. I have high expectations for everyone around me, for you, for my family, for my friends, everyone in my life. I unfortunately have high expectations for everyone. And when I say unfortunately, it's because it's not my place, but it's because I love and I care about these people. And it's like, I want you to be the best version of yourself.
It's a double-edged sword.
It really is.
And it's hard to find that balance there.
And that's what I'm working on right now. But one of the things I realized is that this expectations that I had for everyone around me were unrealistic. And it was almost like I was a dictator. It was like, this is how you need to be. And if you don't show up this way, then I'm going to subconsciously act out. And that's what I was doing. And that's what I realized. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, Andy, like, this is toxic. And it's realizing that I've been doing this for quite some time and I was unaware of it. But it's like you said, it's a double-edged sword because you want the best for everyone around you. You want to help everyone around you. But at the end of the day, that's not your place to go overboard with it. You can help people, but to create an expectation in your head of how the world should be, you have no control over that. You don't have control over other people. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to control other people, and I can't, which goes back to having radical honesty with yourself, observing your actions in real time, and accepting reality for what it is. And what I mean by reality, I mean the outside world. That is reality. That's something that we don't have control over, nor should we. But what we do have control over is our internal state, our actions on a daily basis, and how we are showing up. So if we're taking all of our energy and we're trying to direct it outwards, and we're trying to control all of these different things, that means that we're not saving that energy to do the internal work, to work on the only thing that we do have control over, which is ourself. And that was a big realization that I had in that moment. But going back to this whole beating myself up thing, I most definitely was beating myself up really bad. And when I said I have a high expectations for everyone around me, I do. But the expectations that I have for myself is so much worse, to the point where it is toxic. And I had to realize that too. And that was an identity clash because this whole podcast is designed to help people reach their true potential, to be the best version of themselves. So to have to take a step back and be like, you have taken this so far that it has become toxic and detrimental to the life that you want, which is a family, which is a great work environment, which is close friends and all these different things. That was a hard pill to swallow, but I had to. I had to be honest with myself. I had to be honest with the person that I'm becoming, because that's what has happened here. I used to not be this way. I used to not give a fuck about anything or anyone for that matter. And then all of a sudden over the years, it has turned into the other end of the spectrum, right? So having to swallow that pill and having to accept like all this work that you've been putting in was not necessarily the right work.
Expectations are needed, especially for yourself. If you don't have expectations for yourself, like what do you have? Like
you don't have anything.
You don't have anything.
Right.
I ran into the same problem probably I realized it probably around 26 or 27. And it was that I tried to do everything with perfection. When in reality, the world we live in, the universe we live in, when does anything ever happen perfectly, naturally?
It's not supposed to.
It doesn't.
It happens naturally.
It's very, very rare.
It happens naturally, but naturally does not mean that you have control over it. Those are two opposite things there.
So if I hold myself to a perfectionist standard and expectations, I'm setting myself up for failure. And that realization was very profound for me. But it comes from being honest with yourself. Like, nothing you're going to do is ever going to be perfect. So why do you hold yourself that? If you're holding yourself to that level, then everything is just going to be under that, and you're going to put yourself down from it.
And then once again, you're beating yourself up. So that's a trap that we have to avoid here. We have to be real with ourselves. We have to accept ourselves for who we are in this current moment, but we can't beat ourselves up over it. And this is going to be the hardest trap to avoid while we're doing this work of radical honesty, because you're going to hate your fucking self, but you have to stop that from happening as much as possible. You have to see it coming and be like, no, like, we can't do this. We're accepting our past for what it is, and we're creating a new future moving forward, and we're going to develop steps in order to get there. But everything that we both just said about ourselves, like truths that we had to discover about who we are right now, from the outside looking in, that could be considered as positive traits, if not dissected more. So we have to do that as well. When we're observing what we're doing on a daily basis, our actions, our patterns that we're subconsciously doing, we have to dissect those things and be like, is this really good? Which makes it even harder. But that's the thing here. None of this work is easy, which is why no one does it. That's why 1% of the population actually puts in the effort to improve themselves, because it is the most difficult thing to do. It's much easier to just remain distracted and not have to admit your flaws and then put in the work in order to fix those flaws and become a better person. But that's what we have to do. And if you're listening to this podcast, then that's what you want to do. And that's hopefully what me and Cody are helping you do here by going over our stories, going over our past, and what we did moving forward in order to correct this. Like I said, this is something that I am doing right now. At this very moment, this is something that I am dealing with. And this is the hardest thing that I have had to work on, because I thought that I was just doing amazing. And I will say, like, I am a good partner. I am a great dad. But realizing that I was kind of shitty without realizing it in that time, that sucks. Because then you go, holy shit, what else am I missing?
The vulnerability it takes to get to this level is huge. And I think that once you do understand that being honest with yourself, your internal environment, your flaws, what you need to work on to become a better person, is the highest form of self-love you could possibly do.
And that's what all this boils down to, is loving yourself. It's loving yourself and having enough respect for yourself to want more for yourself. And self-love is one of those things that it gets thrown around a lot. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions to it. But at the end of the day, self-love is just having self-respect for yourself. It's acknowledging the fact that you need to take care of yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, and you need to do whatever needs to happen on a daily basis in order for you to do that. That way you can show up as the best version of yourself for all these other people that you care about. That's self-love.
I think it's a huge perspective shift when you understand that as well, because you've flipped the script, man. You go from, being honest with yourself and being punitive and looking down on yourself to being like, you know what, this is okay. And I need to fix these things because I love myself, and it's going to make me a better person. Makes you a better person. It makes everything around you so much better as well.
Your relationships, mostly especially. Like, your relationships are going to improve because you're going to show up as a happier person instead of being held down with all this guilt and self-hatred and all these other things. You're going to show up as a more positive person. And that alone is going to make all of your relationships better because they're going to enjoy being around you instead of dreading being around you. So that's another motivator here to do this inner work, to go down the path of radical honesty and figure out what's going on. What do you need to fix? Being real with yourself about all of this stuff. But once we discover these things, actually, let's pause for a second. How do we discover it? We're talking about once you do, but we're not giving the tools here in order for people to really do this for themselves. The only way that this is possible, the only way that you can do the radical honesty work is in solitude. It's cutting out distractions. It's separating from everyone and everything. And it's sitting with yourself, is being with yourself and observing what's going on. It's replaying situations that have happened. That's how I came to this conclusion with me in my relationships with my family, was I was observing my past behaviors. Those are patterns. And they were reoccurring patterns. But the only way I was able to do that was to separate myself from everything. It was going within, cutting out all distractions, and kind of replaying what's been going on. How have I been handling situations? How have I been showing up? And then once you have that, well, now you're aware of it. You're aware of the issue. And once we have that awareness, now we can start fixing it. But that's not going to happen overnight. You're going to continue repeating these patterns. But all it takes is that self-awareness of what you are currently doing and what you have been doing. Once you discover that, it's a game changer. Because then when you start repeating those patterns and those behaviors, you see it in real time and you go, oh, that's that thing. That's what I've been doing. Okay, cool. Well, I just did it again. Now I can try not to do it moving forward. And then over time, you just continue repeating that. Well, now we're creating a new pattern. And it's a positive one instead of a negative one. But that's what all of this boils down to with radical honesty. It's discovering your patterns. And then once you discover these patterns, it's fixing them in the future and in the present moment. That's what works for me, though. What would you say?
That's exactly what I do. And I like that you brought up that these changes don't happen overnight. I mean, just think, if this is a pattern created from behavior, from something that happened in your childhood, and we'll just use our age, we'll just use 30, for example. It's a good number. So this happened when you were 5 years old and you are now 30. So this pattern that you find has been happening for 25 years.
Where do we get this pattern from?
That is a chunk of your lifetime. And to expect that to change overnight is pretty ignorant.
Right. And a lot of these patterns came from our environment as a kid. It's observing how our parents handled their situations. They were trying their best, but they were unaware of their patterns as well. And then we picked up those patterns. And then we went 30 years replicating them.
And that becomes deeply, deeply ingrained in who you are.
Yeah, it becomes part of your identity. But that's the thing is it's not permanent. And that's what we have to acknowledge here. Nothing is permanent in life. Everything is always changing, meaning you are always changing. You always have the opportunity to fix yourself. That is the only thing that you can fix in all reality is yourself. But who you are in this current moment is not who you have to be tomorrow. At any given moment, you can make the decision that I want to be better. And then you start taking the action to do so, but you do not discover what needs to be changed until you do this inner work and you have radical honesty with yourself and say, okay, this is where I've been fucking up. I hate myself for it a little bit. And that's okay. Good. Have a little bit of fucking self-hatred for yourself. Just a little bit though. Just a little bit. Enough to be like, I've had enough of my shit. That's what I mean by that. It has to get to a point where you're so fed up with your bullshit that you say, okay, enough is a fucking enough. We're done here. Moving forward, we are not going to continue on the same path. We're going to follow a different path, a better path, a path that actually leads us to the life that we want. And the only way that we get the life that we want is by becoming the person that can live that life. But that's what all of this boils down to. People say that kind of shit all the time. I want this, I want that. You haven't deserved that. You haven't. What makes you think that you should have that? Look at yourself. That's radical honesty. Why don't I have the life that I want? It's because I'm stopping myself from having it. Why don't I have the family that I want? Because I show up kind of fucking shitty sometimes. Why don't I have the job that I want? Because I don't put in the work while I am at this job. Or maybe I'm in the wrong job and I'm not in the current career field that I should be in, where I would be thriving. Instead, I'm doing something that I'm not really that good at. And I'm wasting my fucking time here, and I should be doing this instead. Those kind of things are very hard to admit to yourself. But we have to. Because if we don't admit it to ourselves, then how can we ever change it? But it's very easy to say, I want this life. I want this. I want that. Well, the only way that you obtain that for yourself is to become the type of person that can have it. And it all starts with radical honesty. That's what all of this boils down to. And something that has helped me with this, because I do have a lot of guilt right now over this inner work that I'm doing. It's getting better over the weeks, but there's a lot of guilt inside of me right now. And that is the worst feeling. There's nothing worse than guilt. It's one of the lowest energy frequencies that we can have. It's like 3 above death, pretty much. And what I'm referring to there is Dr. David Hawkins, like whole energy frequency things.
Map of consciousness.
Yeah, map of consciousness.
If you haven't looked into it, it's a
deep.
doozy.
Right. But that's what, like, all energy has a certain frequency. Love, all that vibrates at a higher one. Guilt and all that stuff vibrates lower. So whenever you're feeling guilt, you're depleting yourself of energy. And I felt that in that moment when I was just overwhelmed with guilt from my past actions. Like I said, none of them were anything crazy. I'm not like a fucking monster or anything at home. But like I said, I have very high expectations for myself. And whenever I acknowledge that I've not been showing up as the best version of myself, there's a lot of guilt there. But I was depleted of energy. I didn't want to do a single damn thing.
I'm glad we brought up the Mr. David Hawkins map of consciousness talk, because the turning point in the energy fields and map of consciousness is courage. And it takes a fuck ton of courage to even start this work and to even start being honest with yourself.
But once you get that, though, you catapult. You catapult towards the progress that you want to make. That's what gives you the energy in order to do this work, is courage. 100%.
If there's any motivation needed to do this work, one of the things that it was a very big realization that I had, and I forgot where exactly I was. I was probably on a hike, probably in Linville Gorge down by the river, one of my favorite places. But if the current version of yourself, if you did not do any work in this current version of yourself, who you are today, if there is no work done past this point, are you okay with being the same person for the rest of your life? And if you're young, if you're 30, if you're 25 or 30, I mean, that's a good 50 years in today's standards. So
I almost just threw up when you said that.
You're going to spend the rest of your life, 50 years, just throwing out a number, being the exact same person you are today. What does that look like? It looks like a life of fucking misery if you are already a miserable person. You're going to continue down that path, doing the same shit that you've been doing, and you're not going to be any happier for the rest of your life.
And you could always be doing more.
Always.
Your life could always be better. Even if right now you have an amazing life, which I hope you do. I consider myself very fortunate with the life that I have. I have everything I could ever want. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop working for even more, because there is no limit here. There is no limit on who you can become. There is no limit on the life that you can create for yourself. Why stop at any given moment? And the more experiences that we acquire for ourselves, the more that perspective is going to expand. And those possibilities of what kind of life we can have is going to expand as well. So that's why it's infinite. Every opportunity you have opens up a new door for you. And that's why it should never stop. This journey of self-improvement is never ending. It's until the day you die. And that's a great thing, because it means that you're always evolving. Like everything else in this universe, it's always growing. It's always changing. And that's how we have to approach ourselves, and that's how we have to approach our life. But going into the guilt thing, I think that this is something that can really help people, because this is what I'm currently doing for myself. So I have a therapist. I have had a therapist for 3 years now, 2 years, something like that. Her name is Cody. She's absolutely amazing. And I was talking to Cody about this last week. And I brought up the guilt thing. I brought up everything, all this inner work that I've been doing. And what Cody told me to do was to sit down and write out amends to everyone that I may have acted poorly towards in the past. Write a letter to myself, forgiving myself for my past mistakes, and then just throwing it away, burning it, whatever you need to do. But getting that out of your head, getting it out of your body, putting it on an external piece of paper is tremendously helpful. And that's something that anyone can do. And even if you don't have guilt, that's just a personal thing that I'm currently experiencing for myself. But either way, there's going to be some sort of self-hatred there. Like I said, that self-hatred is okay if it's enough to be like, enough is enough, and it propels you towards a better future. But either way, you're going to be experiencing some sort of discomfort there. You're going to be let down by your past behaviors.
I'm pretty sure that this is a yes from you, but it was there becomes a moment, what we talk about is super heavy and very deep. And I do want to give people, hope here, because there is this is one of the hardest but most beautiful things you could do. There becomes a time and moment in your self-improvement journey where you become content with who you are. This isn't just a lifelong thing of just shit. There becomes a moment where you become very content with who you are as a person. And then from there, it doesn't go backwards, because you've seen the light. You're in this beautiful headspace, and you don't let yourself slip to the same level that you are. So there will come a moment in time where you just are like, okay, well, I've done a lot of work, and this person, this new version of myself that I've created is a good, solid person. Well, that's your new base, and that's just what you build off of.
100%. We're always trying our best. Even over everything I just talked about, at those moments, I was trying my best. I was just unconscious of how I was really behaving. And everyone does that because of ego. Everyone has an ego, and that's what the ego does. That's okay. I'm not bashing the ego. I think the ego is very beneficial.
Ego is survival.
Ego is survival. And if you want to survive in this world, you have to have ego. So there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, we need to be able to observe the ego, observe our behaviors, observe our patterns, and then fix them, right? But there is a point that you get to on this journey where you are some sort of content And that's not content as far as like nothing needs to change. I'm perfect. It's a matter of it's okay. It's forgiveness. And it's realizing that nothing is permanent. You're not permanent. And that you're going to do better moving forward. There should never be a point where you give up on yourself. And there won't be. Because you're doing this work. If you're at a point where you're really just trying to fix your flaws, eliminate these bad habits, fix these patterns, all these different things, you're going to have to forgive yourself. And that's a very natural process, I think. I don't think anyone that gets to this point in their self-improvement journey, I don't think they don't have a certain level of compassion for themselves, but also everyone else around them. Because the more work that you do on yourself and the more that you realize that you're fucked up and that everyone else is fucked up too, you start forgiving other people as well. You stop beating up your parents for, things that they may have done, your partner, your friends, everyone else. Everyone is trying their best. You're trying your best. And you realize that. And it's okay, cool. Like, I fucked up. That's okay. It's okay to fuck up. What's not okay is repeating the patterns once you're aware of them, but that will not happen once you discover them. And that's the key here. And that's that hope that you're referring to. It's acquiring this self-awareness in yourself. It's having the realization that, okay, this is what I'm doing. It's not going to continue happening moving forward because now you're aware of it. That's all it takes. It's just that quickly. As soon as you realize what you've been doing, moving forward, every time that happens, you're going to see it. And every time that you see it, it gets a little bit stronger and you're able to control it a little bit more. And then it's almost rapid. It's so quick how fast you can fix these things. It's not going to happen overnight, but give it a few months, putting yourself in these situations where these patterns come up again, these behaviors come out, catching them, not letting them control you, you taking control of it. Well, now you're creating a new habit. You're not handling these situations like you did in the past, meaning this old you is slowly losing its grip. And this new you is taking hold, this stronger you, this version of you that has more self-awareness. That is who dictates where you go into the future. So there is hope here, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's not easy, but nothing in life that is worthwhile.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Norse Mentality. This podcast is a byproduct of Norse Fitness. We make clothing, fitness accessories, supplements, and other tools to help you reach your true potential. You can check it out at norsefitness.co. And if you found this episode beneficial, please share it with a friend. That way we can continue to make a bigger impact and change the world. Thank you for your support, and we'll talk to you soon.